So there has been a lot of talk lately and over the past few decades really about black people who are descendants of slaves receiving reparations. And of course, reparations has not happened. Back after slavery, we went through the post-slavery period and Jim Crow and all that. And they promised black people 40 acres and a mule. It never happened. And I posed a question that I haven't yet heard nobody talk about. What if they actually gave our ancestors reparations? Where would black America be today if our ancestors received the compensation that they deserved after slavery? And there have been a lot of arguments for reparations and a lot of arguments against reparations. I'm not here to talk about whether we should receive reparations or not. I'm talking about where would black America be if our ancestors had reparations? Would we be living in big, beautiful homes and driving nice cars collectively and on equal footing with white society and everybody else? Or would we still be in the current conditions that we're in? And, you have had some black people to make it to the promised land and they're living really good lives, living in beautiful suburban homes, nice cars, good jobs. I'm from Atlanta, and Metro Atlanta has a very high percentage of black people in the middle class. I think our black population is around 2 million plus for the whole metro area. Georgia has the third largest black population in the nation, and a lot of black people down here in Georgia live really good compared to elsewhere in the country. Texas, Florida, North Carolina are some other southern states where you have lots of black neighborhoods that are very successful. Our ancestors like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, all of them were instrumental in helping to push for the eradication of slavery. Harriet Tubman, as we all know, led the Underground Railroad where I don't think it was thousands, but I think hundreds, if not close to 1,000 black people were free. She was taking them up to the north into Canada. And let's just get into whether or not we'd be better off. We had so many things happen beyond slavery that hurt black America. You had all the race riots. They bombed and burnt down Tulsa, Oklahoma. You had riots and racial attacks and violence in Memphis, Tennessee, Wilmington, North Carolina. They were all over the country. There were thriving black towns all over the country that suffered as a result of white supremacists attacking the black communities. It was literally dozens of race riots that occurred after slavery ended. And I would even argue the point that the white supremacists would have been very angry. They were already angry that they had to live amongst black people after integration happened. But prior to integration, the white supremacists was terrorizing black communities across the country. They might have terrorized us even more if they gave our ancestors reparations. That would have probably made them even angrier than they already were. You had the Great Depression, which had things uneasy. You had the Ku Klux Klan. Poverty drives people to do things that they normally wouldn't do. You had people in bread lines. The Great Depression hurt the American society, in a catastrophic way. Like the old saying goes, when white America catches the cold, black America catches the flu. So you had racial terrorism from the Ku Klux Klan. You had the Great Depression. You had the Great Society Act, where black people start living in housing projects when they start doing all the government homes. Coincidentally, the very first housing project was built in Atlanta in 1937. It was called Techwood Homes. And Atlanta, Georgia is also the first city to tear down their housing projects. So black folks was living in substandard housing. We know the projects was supposed to be a place where people moved to get on their feet. And it was supposed to be more of a hand up, but a lot of the people that lived in the projects made it a generational thing, and it was more of a handout, and they just kept doing it. And unfortunately, these places became known for drugs and crime and homicide and all kind of things going on in these communities. And the young girls getting pregnant and molested and all kind of stuff. You had the practice of redlining, where the banks would purposely discriminate against black communities and devalue their homes and make it less difficult for them to get bank loans on their homes, their neighborhoods were too risky, as the banks would say. That was racism. Uh, Unfortunately, black women were used to help push the feminist movement, the sexual revolution, having more indiscriminate sex, creating more children out of wedlock. Black women and black men were once known as the moral compass of this society. And when we lost our morality, things started to really fall apart. The black woman is naturally the most fertile woman on the planet. And there's a reason why the black woman now leads the nation in abortions, because it's easy for black women to get pregnant. And the fact that we're not as chaste as we used to be, you now have an increase in children growing up without fathers. At one point, the black community was the most married community in the country. We had a higher marriage rate than white people. We now lead the nation in STDs and HIV and preventable diseases, because everything ain't for everybody. When we turned against the Most High God, we have suffered, and we have suffered the most. So following is not always a good idea. We should have stayed true to who we were and our morals. Then, of course, we had the notorious crack epidemic. The crack epidemic decimated black society, and to this day, nobody can tell us where the crack came from. I don't believe that the black community invented crack cocaine. All of a sudden, back in the 80s, under the Reagan administration, crack cocaine started to pop up in neighborhoods across Los Angeles, and then next thing you know, it's in New York, it's in Atlanta, it's in Chicago, it's in DC, it's in Houston, Dallas, and everywhere in between. Little smaller cities, medium-sized cities, Gary, Indiana, wherever. And the notorious Joseph Robinette Biden wrote the 1994 crime bill, which led to the mass incarceration of black people, and Mr. William Jefferson Clinton, aka Bill, signed it into law. And this crime bill led to the mass incarceration of hundreds of thousands of black men, taking these black men out of the home. So you had all these different things that were a major blow to black society, and we're still suffering from these incidents and these happenings to this day in 2023. The crack epidemic was, in my opinion, the nail in the coffin for the black community. It was the final blow. You already had the black woman raising the kids by herself when they did the expanded welfare state. And this just isn't Martin Luther King's dream. I just don't believe that it is. Integration also hurt black society in ways that I don't believe he thought it would hurt us. As far as economically, we no longer have a black economy. Him and guys like John Lewis, I think they had their hearts in the right place as far as fighting for equality in the black community, having rights and all that, but things haven't turned out the way they expected them to turn out. Then the sellout black pastor, it's too many of them to name, but we all know who Raphael Warnock is. He's pushing the Democrat agenda, which is not a black agenda. Anything that the Democrat wants him to push, he'll push. LGBT, abortion, transgenderism, all that stuff hurts black society. TD Jakes is another one. I call him TD Snakes. There's another young guy that's a very popular pastor out of the state of Oklahoma named Mike Todd. He's just doing way too much. That spit on that man's face. He literally rubbed spit in that man's face for a skit during a church sermon. He's saying he's unclear about what the Bible says about marriage, even though he knows what the Bible says. He's very flamboyant, wears all kind of weird clothes and hairstyles, and I mean, he just is not being a real, true biblical man of God. He just recently had an Easter show that was highly controversial. John Gray. It's too many black pastors to name. These ain't the first and they won't be the last. They have sold out. They are pushing the Democrat agenda. The Democrat agenda actually destroys the black community far more than it helps it. So in conclusion, it's very, very difficult to say where black society would be if they gave our ancestors reparations, because all these things that I just went over hurt black America so bad that the only way that reparations would have helped black America to where we would be at equal footing with the white community and everybody else is if we just truly stayed separate and just stayed away from them and everything that they offered us, particularly the government support, the welfare. We built our own communities. We shopped with our own, and we just kind of stayed sort of like a nation within a nation. You know, I just don't see that reparations would have put Black America on equal footing with our white counterparts, having to deal with all this stuff that the ancestors had to deal with post-slavery. It wasn't just like, okay, you're no longer slaves, we're going to leave you alone and let you build and prosper. No, they never left us alone. They never gave us an opportunity to just build and be by ourselves. It was always something. It was one thing after the other. So, like I said, this video was not about the current reparations fight. This video is about what if they gave ancestors to the people who actually went through the things that they went through, and where would we be? And I honestly don't know if we would be better off or worse off, because we'll never know what it would be like for Black America to just be left alone and left to our own devices. We'll never know that because we can't go back in time. So appreciate y'all watching. Y'all can comment below. Let me know your thoughts.